Present. Here. Thank you. So we have 2 committee people present and 1 absent. As always, this committee meeting is available virtually, and the virtual participation information is available on board docs in the agenda items. Present. Okay. Tonight's meeting is a public meeting of the Board of Education Policy Committee, where we, as a representative body of our entire community, conduct the board's business in public. Part of the public process is the allocation of time to hear from members of our community during public comments. Public comments from those in our community are valued and considered as we make decisions. Please know that we will listen intently to the comments presented, but will not respond at this time. If a follow-up conversation is deemed necessary, you will be contacted by members of the board or administration. The following process is in place to provide a fair opportunity for our speakers. 30 minutes have been allotted for all in-person public comments. Please provide your name when you come to the podium. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes to speak. The timekeeper will alert the speaker when there are 30 seconds left. Seeing that we have no public comments, we will move on to Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the first item is to approve the policy committee meetings from the March 1st. Was it March 1st? 2022. Yeah, I think it was March 2nd. So that's why I was like, March 1st did not look great. So the policy committee meetings from March 2nd, 2022. Any changes?
I have no changes.
So those minutes will stand as presented. Okay, and let's move on to policy discussion topics. So as a reminder to the community, we have the district and the board and the policy committee are committed to this massive undertaking of looking at all of our policies and keeping them in a 5-year cycle review to make sure they're not only updated with the press recommendations, but also representative of what is actually happening in our buildings and in our district. So we continue this work quarterly, and this is our quarterly meeting regarding that. So tonight's policy updates, we'll start with 2.1.10. And that has to do with the qualifications, term, and duties of board officers.
This particular, sorry, it's a little close. Sorry, okay, there we go. This particular policy was reviewed as well as moved to for board first reading. It was pulled because several of the board members had specific questions as it related to the term and the timing of the 2-year press recommendation of the 2-year term, and how that would impact the current board reorganization. And so we wanted to go back and ensure legal clarification on when that 2-year term would go into effect. And clearly we understand now that the organization for the following 2022-23 school year has occurred. So this, if we decide to move forward, if you decide to move forward with the 2-year term, that would then begin for the school year 23-24.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. So I think, and I'll just say this and then we can talk about it a little more. You know, I think that there was, from the last board meeting where this item was pulled from the consent agenda, there really doesn't seem to be a kind of a one or consistent opinion from the board about how we should proceed with this policy, whether the tenure should be 1 year or 2 years for each of the officers on the board. So I feel like although there are updates that we need to approve on this, some of the qualifications, remote meetings if necessary, and some of the things that the president has to do, and removal of some of the responsibilities that are no longer the responsibilities of the board, but now the county. I do think that, in my opinion, based on the lack of kind of consensus, great word, thanks Beth, about what this should be, that we should leave our policy as a one-year term for all officers. So that's just my mindset. Beth, how are you feeling about it?
I agree. I felt like there was not a consensus on going ahead with a change to this policy. And it seemed that because of that, at this time, we should leave that portion of it as the one-year term and make the other changes in the policy that you referred to.
Dr. Campbell, anything more? Good? Okay.
Yes, I'm in support of that.
Okay. So Kathy, if you could, we're gonna vote, not vote, we're going to push this to the first read, but we just need that, change that back to one-year term. Like, so don't make the change for the two-year term portion of it, but please make all the other press recommendation changes. Is that right, Beth? Okay. All right.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Moving on to 2150 committees. Yeah, this was also pulled from our March policy committee meeting. So I think Dr. Rubenstein is going to give us a little update or insight, or Dr. Campbell, sorry. Yes. I saw your name highlighted.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes. And so you are absolutely correct. This was pulled at the March 2nd policy meeting because there were some additional questions that we wanted to continue to discuss as an admin team, particularly to ensure that this policy is representative of the committees that the law requires us to have, as well as the current committees that District 205 has in place. With that, we are still working to ensure that we are in compliance with the policy to ensure both committees as required by law, in addition to adding the current committees that we have in place. So at this particular time, I am asking for us to continue to have some time to make updates and to ensure that it is fully representative of our committee structure that we currently have in place, in addition to the recommendations that press has provided.
Yeah, Dr. Campbell, thank you for that, because I do think that, although I think all the committee work that's detailed in this policy is being done in some way, I feel like, this policy doesn't even include the fact that we have a standing committee for finance, right? Like it's really, and to go to the point of why we're doing this, it really is not reflective of what's going on here. So I appreciate you asking for the additional time. I think that, getting these committees together and not only defining the fact that there is a committee, but defining their purpose and making sure the right people that, have the right knowledge and background and experience to be productive participants in those committees, I think is really important work. And I don't think we should just kind of, approve it to approve it. Like, if it's not happening, then we really should continue to look at this and make sure we're doing it the right way. Beth?
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time as a team to work through all that, and for the public as well, so that they understand how all this work is getting done and our required committees and what that all looks like, and what the work is that is being done in each committee, so that we can be transparent about the work that we're doing. So thank you.
So Kathy will pull that one from the agenda. Okay, moving on to, I just lost my chart. We're going to move on to 230, public participation at a board meeting. Dr. Campbell, from what I can tell, this really is just a legal reference update.
That is correct.
Yeah, and I think, I kind of read through our public comment protocols, and I think this policy speaks to exactly how we are operating in our board meetings and committee meetings. Obviously, over the last few board meetings, you saw that the president, Mrs. Cafario, extended our public comments to 45 minutes due to the, just our feeling that the desire of the community who wanted to be heard. We wanted to make sure everyone was able to, could afford the time. And this policy allows her to do that at any given time. So I do think this policy reflects an accurate representation of what's going on. So, good, Beth?
Yep, I agree.
Next, 370. Succession of authority. Dr. Campbell?
Yes, this policy is just also for review. The only, there are actually no changes. It's just to, which our current practices, if for some reason I'm out of, not available to be present in the leading of the district, in many of those cases, those roles have been delegated to our associate superintendent, the same for building principal and any administration, and that is communicated to the Board of Education. So this policy is definitely reflective of our current practices.
Great. And then although the policy doesn't detail those, that succession, there is protocols in place within the district, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. I'm good. Beth?
Yep, move that one forward.
Just leave it on.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, next one, 410, fiscal and business management. Mr. Welton. I'm gonna pass one. There we go. I thought you were just refusing to talk.
No, I really did want to talk about the fiscal and business management policy. So the top part there, it talks about the authorization for access. That is done during our onboarding of all employees, and so we make sure that is completed. There's a few sections here where they use the ISBE as opposed to the State Board of Ed. The budget adoption process, we follow that. Usually the tentative budget is in either July or August, and then the final approval is right after the tentative budget. We post it on the website, and so and then we have the budget hearing in September, and we make sure that we file it with the county in the appropriate times, as well as the tax levy. And then the deficit reduction plan hasn't been required in recent years, but if it were required, we would make sure we follow the State Board of Ed guidelines on the deficit reduction plan.
So other than some, acronym updates, the bulk portion of this, the final budget adoption, section 1 through 4, those are things that we've already been doing. It's just that we didn't have it reflected in our policy, and now we're adding it in to reflect the press policy.
That's correct. We've always done those items.
Great, looks good. Yep.
Nope, good with me. Thank you. Thank you. 470, resource conservation. Mr. Welton again.
So really, this is just a footnote change, but it describes the recycling, and the district does, we have commingled recycling in the district that we do district-wide, which, allows us, we use recycled paper or we recycle paper, plastics, metals, and other recyclables in blue containers, and we have that as part of our contract for garbage removal and recycling removal is the use of recycling. And at York, we have the cardboard shipping containers are bundled and recycled, and 100% of our fluorescent lamps are also now recycled. And we recently at York, we received an award for the 4,442 pounds of plastic that the Eco Club collected, and they received a check for $2,500 that they were going to use for a water refillers, 2 water refiller stations at York. But as far as that sentence that talks about the 50%, we haven't been tracking the actual solid waste as far as 50%. And if you read the footnote, it talks about when that baseline for the 50% reduction it could be from 2008. And it wouldn't surprise me with all of the recycling efforts that we have going on around the district that since 2008 we would have achieved that 50%, but we haven't been tracking it.
Okay. So that's just kind of was something to strive for as a district, and even though it says 2020, we'll just continue to, our efforts to do that.
We definitely will continue and try to recycle as much as as much as is feasible. In the past, we have tried to purchase recycled paper that didn't work well with our copy machines being able to be fed through, that just the quality of the recycled paper didn't work for us. We tried to we wanted to do it.
Yeah.
It just didn't work with our copy machines.
Okay, thanks for the explanation.
Just curiosity, other than, saying that all the fluorescent lights have been replaced, what kind of documentation or records are there to track it?
We just don't have
I mean,
tracking of, all the blue cans are dumped into one
right.
recycle container, and then all of the regular garbage goes in the regular garbage. We tried to reach out to the garbage company today to say, hey, are you tracking how many bins you're taking? But we couldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think we have it.
Well, I think it's important for the community to know there is a 100% effort to do all we can. and those exceptions, like the copy paper that you just mentioned, are going to be the exceptions. That's not the norm. So,
Yep.
good.
It looks like even in the footnote, it mentions that it's hard to track
Yep.
and what the baseline would be are not super clear. So I appreciate the efforts, though, for us to continue to do everything that we can. And thanks to York's Eco Club and everybody who helped out with that. That was fantastic.
Okay, moving on, 4180, pandemic preparedness.
So this was just, the press had made a minor change in that paragraph about the pandemic is a global outbreak of a disease, and they just changed the words a little bit from widespread and sustained. So it looks like they just changed the definition of pandemic in that first paragraph there.
So this is reflective of what our policy is based, other than that one change in wording.
That's correct. It's just that.
So we reviewed this recently.
Say again?
We reviewed this one recently.
Recently, yep.
Mhm.
That's why I feel like it was.
Yep.
Okay,
That's easy.
good, Beth?
Yep.
Okay. All right, moving on to 540. Communicable and chronic infections and disease. Mr. Rubenstein?
So this policy change just makes some brief changes to some legal references. I would not tell us to adopt the press version because we don't have that committee. It recommends adopting this committee, which is the Chronic Infectious Disease Review Team, which is not something that we have. And that's optional, not in D205. So I would recommend keeping the policy as is, just as a 5-year review.
So can I ask, who is responsible for notifying the superintendent of what that committee would be? Would that be you?
So Luke and I actually do that together.
He
yes.
immediately looked over in your direction. I just want, threw
Yep.
you under the bus very quickly.
I did not throw anybody under the bus.
He's like
We-
this.
Co-responsibility, so, yeah.
Okay, so there is a process in place that the information is
Very much so.
relayed to the superintendent.
Yep.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
okay, good for you. Okay. Next, 570, religious holiday.
So on this policy, it actually does implement a slight change. It provides the superintendent or designee discretion to the number of days granted for a religious holiday. And currently it states 3, so it doesn't limit to 3. It could be either less or more at the discretion of the superintendent or the designee.
So so we are adopting that then.
Correct.
Okay, so I think this is probably a question that we're gonna ask for the next couple. Does this in any way contradict anything in our agreement?
No, so in the, we would be following still the ETC CBA,
Okay,
number of days, and that currently states 3 days.
Great,
okay, great,
that was my question.
yeah. All right,
Okay.
good. 580, court duty. And you can just answer that same question, because we're gonna ask that same question. We just don't want to put, any policy we have, and to be in contradiction of any
Correct.
agreement we have with our teachers or any
Right.
part of our employees.
So in 580, what we would recommend is we accept the press reference, but we would strike the word licensed because we would apply this to both licensed and educational support personnel.
And that's our practice now, currently? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, and we are adding in the per the agreements, which is specific to our district, so
Correct.
we are reflecting, okay, great. And then, so we'll just, Kathy, when this goes to, we would need to change a lot of stuff in what I'm looking at here, in our packet, because this is, indicates license throughout. Yep. And then take out the note at the bottom, and the question marks. So, okay, great stuff.
Great, no, that's good.
All right, 5110, recognition of service.
This, in 5110, this is just a 5-year review and an updated footnote.
Bless you. So, kind of that second paragraph that was in our original policies kind
Right.
of incorporated into that original statement, I'm guessing.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Any questions on that one, Beth?
No. I think it,
But obviously the board and the district are very supportive of recognizing employees, and I think, I cannot think of a year more than this one as a board member or as a parent in the community that we've done a better job recognizing our teachers and all the hard work they've done in our buildings and just the amazing things that are happening than we have this year. So thank you to Dr. Campbell, and I'm fully anticipating we're going to continue that trend because I can't wait. Although I don't want to rush summer.
Yeah, true. But yes, thank you for acknowledging that because I really appreciate the openness that this policy allows in terms of us, as they use the word periodically, but we this year established at each board meeting that we've had opportunities to do spotlights and highlights, and that will continue. And I think it's now starting to become embedded in our culture of recognition and celebration, which is one of the goals that we set as a board and administrative team. So
I mean, it's just,
yeah.
it just sets the tone for everything that's all the amazing things that are happening in our district right now. And I think that, I love celebrating all the hard work that our buildings and our principals and our teachers and everybody is involved in, so.
Yeah, we've had so much to celebrate and achievements of our staff and awards and various things. And I'd like to see that continue. And I agree that this leaves our policy a little bit more open to be able to do that in many different ways. So I'm good with this one.
All right, moving on to 5.120, employee ethics, conduct, and conflict of interest. So this was pulled during our Board of Education meeting for some clarification and alignment with our partners. So Luke, could you please?
Yes,
update?
so in 5120, under prohibited interest, where press was stating to strike the paragraph where, starting with District 205 employees are not to solicit, we are in agreement that we would like to keep that language in because it provides clarity for our staff. And even our bargaining unit is in agreement with that language as well.
Great. Yeah, and again, I think we said it at the board meeting, it certainly is not, we want that clarity to be there and an agreement to be there. So it was great that we looked at that and that they voiced that concern with us and that we're in alignment now.
Yes,
So that'll be put back in.
that'll be put back in, yes.
So Kathy, again, let's just make sure that's back in for the packet. Anything else? No. All right, good. Good with me. I just want to say it's another example. Gonna give kudos. I'm in a good mood tonight. Like just the difference in the working. Well, I don't know that I would agree with that. Another example of like the how far the progress in our relationship between the union and the district has come and how positive it is and collaborative it is, and it's really refreshing. It really is. So thank you, Mr. Pavone.
I would agree, thank you.
All right, moving on to 5.140, solicitations by or from staff.
Right, and there is actually no change to the 205 policy on this one.
So this is just a 5-year review.
Right.
Annual. Okay, good, Beth?
Yep.
All right, moving on to 670, teaching about religion. This goes to Mr. Grenz. So I'm sorry, I did want to mention that on the policy committee agenda meeting, 5240 was listed to be reviewed. I just want to let everybody know that this was submitted to legal for review and it was not yet completed at the time of tonight's meeting. So we're going to bump that to the next policy committee meeting to give them more time to finish the legal review.
Correct, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to 670.
So there is no change to this policy, so recommended to adopt.
Okay, just a normal 5-year review. Is there footnote? There's just some footnote changes and updates, so that's it.
Yep, looks good.
Great. Moving on to 680, teaching controversial issues.
680 has an adjustment in the legal reference, so recommending that for adoption as presented as well.
Oh, yeah, so they just added the legal reference, Scott, because we just did see this one in January.
Correct.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
good, Beth?
Yep.
All right, moving on. 6140, education of homeless children.
So we have one more new policy. I don't know if it made it on.
6110.
Oh,
6110. It was a late addition. It's exciting.
Sorry, I don't have the packet.
I'm sorry for the miss.
Programs for students at risk of academic failure and/or dropping out of school and graduation incentive programs.
Yeah, this was in that separate email.
So this is a new policy for us. It's in many other districts' policy books. We had not adopted it in the past. We have many programs in the district, definitely that accomplish and achieve each one of these items as outlined. I don't know the history as to why we hadn't adopted it, but as an example, some of the ways in which we achieve these items in the policy, which are directed at basically ensuring support for students at risk of academic failure and potentially even dropping out of high school. We have things like the York Saturday Success Academy, York Winter Success Academy, summer school credit recovery. We've made some expansions to summer school in the last 2 years. We have a bridge program for students returning to school, potentially after being out of school. We also have several Tier 2 academic programs, study seminars. We have the math support, academic literacy, all of those items that we had presented also in, I think it was October, as well as November. So this is, if anything, memorializing the programs that we already have in place with a policy that draws attention to them, I guess you could say.
And I assume that there are a lot of procedures in place to figure out, to identify these students and make sure that, nobody
Absolutely.
slips through the cracks and that these things are done in the most timely.
Timely and regular.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is, again, like really a recognition of why we're doing this, right? Like why we don't have this policy already, I'm not sure. I mean, it was adopted by press in 2019. But this is, again, one of the reasons that we're doing this. And we have had the opportunity at the board meetings to hear about all of the programs that have been implemented in the last year or a little more. And it's so important. We talk about our most at-risk students, and this certainly deserve the attention and commitment we have to them. So thank you for bringing this to light, and I am fully supportive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kathy, I'm going to leave this on the side for you to take. Oh, okay, I'll put it right in my packet. All right, now moving on to 6140, Education of Homeless Children.
So this is regarding education of homeless children, and it makes some changes to legal references and adds a section about reviewing their status after 18 months and then annually thereafter. And so I would recommend adopting the updated version from press.
So I like that part that is added in, because not only could their status have changed, but their needs also might have changed, and we might need to shift in how we can help support them. So
We are regularly reviewing status of our students who are McKinney-Vento eligible regardless, so.
yeah, I appreciate that. So I agree with, did you need that?
Well, I see it. I'm just trying to make sure what we're doing here, but is it reflected in ours? Child is denied. It doesn't look like the changes from press made it into what our policy should look like, at least in my packet. Because wherever a child or his or her guardian, are you seeing it? Because in my packet, it shows that it ends at the written explanation for the denial. And then optional, not in 205 policy currently.
Maybe it wasn't
should
put in
be-
yet because we were deciding.
That should be
it should
underscored
have
in
been.
red, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should be in red. Yep,
Added,
it should be
yes.
added, right. Because you're recommending it, right? So it should be in red in this policy.
Yes.
Yeah, so as long as that makes it in, yeah, I really appreciate the added attention to this, and I agree with Beth completely. This is super important, and our acknowledgement of that, just like the last policy, is a tribute to who we are as a district. Like, nobody should fall behind, and everybody should be
Supported.
supported. Thank you, Beth. So, yeah, so if we can just make sure that's added in. I'm good, Beth?
Yep, yep.
All right, 6290 homework. Dr. Grenz loves talking about homework.
Yes, especially in my home.
Yes.
This policy is recommended for adoption as well. With one caveat, there is an optional section in this policy as it's presented regarding missed homework. And we actually provide more specificity than is provided in that section in our handbooks, our newly revamped handbooks. And we didn't want that to run counter to some of the language that's provided in the optional section. given some possible vagueness, specifically around reasonable time frame. We absolutely provide those opportunities for students, just with much more extensive detail in the handbook. For example, in the middle school, in the event of a prolonged excused absence, special arrangements may be made to extend the time period allowed for the assignment. So I think it provides more clarity in the handbook, and we did not want to get into a situation in which our messaging was conflicting in policy versus our handbook.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because I really don't think the press recommendation of adding that stuff in the missed homework section really adds to the support of the policy. I mean, I completely agree. It conflicts it or not conflicts it, but it makes it confusing, especially after having just gone through the extensive handbook review that we all did. And I feel like, I mean, the detail that's in that handbook really does provide the clarity that families need. And I encourage all the families to take the time to,
Yeah.
not just the hard copy when it comes home, but the online version that's available and will be the most updated if anything happens or changes throughout the year, so.
Yeah, just the things noted here about homework are extremely important as for our kids' success. And I know that we're going to be reviewing some of those different policies and procedures the beginning of next year or at some point next year. And just that we would be mindful that our procedures are aligned with the framework here. Because I think some of these things are really important, just that communication link between school and home, and encouraging that self-direction and self-discipline with homework, and that the homework is really covers the concepts and is meaningful. And I know that's part of what's in our handbook, so I'm glad we have all that laid out here so that those two things can align and we can just revisit that.
And that those points you raise are also emphasized in a more pronounced way in the handbook, particularly in some of our younger grades. So that's an improvement in terms of consistency.
Well,
Thank
I know,
you.
Yeah, and I know we all acknowledged and appreciated the efforts that went into the handbook. And so, but we just want to reiterate it here. We truly appreciate how much time and effort went into it because we know how much of an undertaking it was, and it's reflective in how much information is available to our parents. It's never been available like that before. So truly appreciative.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yep, this looks good.
6-330, achievement and awards.
There is there is no change to this policy. I do have one recommendation for accuracy, which is to consider the removal of the words class rank. The policy reads, the superintendent shall maintain a uniform process for secondary schools to calculate on at least a yearly basis each student's grade point average and class rank, as well as an honor roll for each class. My recommendation would be to remove that to state on a yearly basis each student's grade point average, as well as honor roll for each class. My understanding of class rank in this district is that it was removed in 2006, and the data that's been monitored since its removal has not seen any negative consequences that result from that removal. Things like attendance in colleges, specifically competitive colleges, has remained the same. Hopefully it's gone up in certain years, but we've not seen any significant decline in that data as it relates to class rank. I don't have a full perspective of the reasoning for why it was removed, but I do know that we are not alone in terms of other high schools having paid less attention to class rank in the last few years.
And just to be clear, if a college or a university requests that information, it is available
Yes,
for
yes.
any.
Only at the request of that college or university.
Right,
though.
that's
Yeah.
what I said.
Like
So if a
a-
college or
right, yeah.
university requests it as part of a student's application to
Yeah.
their, it is available to them.
Like I'm just clarifying
Yeah.
because a parent or guardian
Yeah.
can't call up and say, I would like to have Kevin ranked and see where Kevin falls
Right.
amongst his class at York. Just because we have had that question
Yeah.
since this policy last came up for review.
So that has to come directly from
From the
the
college or university,
institution. Okay.
right.
And we, each year revamp and revise the school profile that goes to the colleges, and that oftentimes is a really helpful disclaimer that allows the colleges to know in advance, okay, here are what this school's parameters are and what their standards and their, expectations are at, and the systems that they use, and they'll use that many times to determine what follow-up information they have, and how they're going to basically review those student applicants. So that school profile is helpful for us and really explains, really how we look at our students and what we consider to be success.
And just as a kind of curiosity question, because I agree, I mean, this is not, again, goes back to what's really going on in practice in our schools, and this has not been going on in practice since 2006. But does that in any way impact, our ranking as a high school? Is that a factor that's included in the rankings that, York was 30 this year, or, in Illinois?
No,
Okay.
no, not at all. In fact, fewer colleges now place a value on class rank.
Great.
So it has not had any of those possible adverse effects.
I agree.
We didn't come across any that asked for.
Yeah, you've gone through it.
Yep.
Are you good, Beth?
Yeah, good.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
So Kathy, we'll just need to make sure that one phrase and class rank is struck out. Oh, it is, okay.
Moving on.
Oh, I saw
Yeah.
it there. Sorry, it was on the back. Sorry. You're on it.
7:15, student and family privacy rights. Evan?
So this is just make some non-substantive changes, language changes to the policy regarding surveys and student and family privacy rights, which we take very seriously and are was put into our handbook again this year. And so I would recommend adopting the changes from press.
Seems minor, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely looks like just policy and legal reference updates.
Exactly it.
Yep.
Okay, good for me. All right, 760, residency. Did I not?
This one was also in a separate.
Yeah.
So this 760 has some cleanup in language about whether it's tuition, without tuition, tuition free, just some cleanup in language. It moved the 2 paragraphs about military service from one page to the other page. Those are just change in location. The thing that we had this at the last policy committee, the confusion about this was numbers 1 through 5. And this is not part of press, but it's what the district has done related to a family that is moving into the district and has a contract on a house in the district. And
Or a rental lease or something like that.
so that's what it has to do with someone moving in.
Yeah.
They haven't moved in yet, but they have a contract. So that's what 1 through 5 are about and how we handle that situation. But that's really the only changes here. But the 1 through 5, it's how we've always handled it in the district. It's not a change in practice for us at all. It's just not in the press language.
It's outlining our practices
Exactly.
specifically as a district.
Yes.
So we've never had like the press details, because there is a big chunk of this press policy. And just so everybody's clear, we've never incorporated requests for non-resident students admission or admission of non-resident students pursuant to an agreement or order. Other than the final one where it says whenever any state or federal law or court order mandates the acceptance. So that's not our practice. We've never had these policies in place, correct?
Correct.
Okay. good, Beth.
This is a really important policy for us. I just want to underscore that because we have, several families that, purchase property or purchase a lot and in process of building a home. And so this provides some direction and some clarity in being in service to families that are moving in with the appropriate documentation to allow for some continuity and consistency for their students within our district. And so I just, wanted to just make sure that we were very, very clear and understand its importance and how this policy, as Mr. Welton has already identified, has guided previous decisions and past practices for us.
Construction timelines don't always follow school year timelines, so we want to make sure kids aren't having to be moved around, and, yeah. So I appreciate that.
You good?
Yep, anything for you?
Nope. 7-230, misconduct with students with disabilities.
So since we are recommending that we are pulling the committee's policy, and this one has to do with the committee's policy, we're going to postpone consideration of this one until we consider the committee's policy.
Look
Yeah.
at those together.
Yeah, this policy specifically states maintaining a committee. So I think that's a great idea. And, know that this is something that you're invested in following up on and moving forward on. So, okay, so we're going to pull 7-230.
Okay.
All right, moving on to 7-270.
Which is administering medication, which is also something that Scott loves talking about. So this policy update removes some references to medical marijuana and a law that was repealed. It makes some non-substantive changes in the language, and it also provides cross-reference to a new policy, hopefully, which the board policy committee will recommend moving forward this evening. I would recommend adopting those changes here. One of the things that has come up over time, I remember when the board was adopting this policy, there were some questions about whether our nurses would feel comfortable administering medical cannabis and those sorts of things. And so the law is permissible to allow nurses and administrators to administer medical marijuana. It doesn't require anybody to do that. And so we have plans in place. We have actually several students in the district who require the use of cannabis for medical purposes. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to me that we don't have a policy that contradicts any kind of prohibitions a person in their, professional certification or licensing cannot adhere to, so.
and this does not.
Yeah, so it says they can, but it doesn't say they shall.
Permissible, right?
Okay, so it's
correct.
allowable but not required.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I could not remember, and I'm, obviously seeing July 2021, so it was a year
Yeah,
ago that
I
we
do
looked
remember.
at this.
That was a part of Ashley's law.
Yeah,
I
I
do
remember this, and we
part of that,
debated about a lot, and I
Long
remember
time,
there was
yes,
many concerns
exactly.
with our nurses, and I just want to
Correct.
make sure that their voices are heard and
Yeah.
respected.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Yep, I agree.
Anything, Beth?
No?
Okay. Good here.
And this is the other policy you were referring
This
to?
is the brand new policy. That is
So just so everybody knows, 7285.
and 285,
can say it because you know
which
me about
is
this word.
renamed and really substantially
Prevention Response
overhauled.
and Management Program.
So it used to be called just the Food Allergy Management Program. And we have a food allergy management program already in place, but now this is referred to as the Anaphylaxis Prevention Response and Management Program, and really refers very specifically to lots of different anaphylactic prevention and response programs that we are required to have by law in our schools. And so there are model policies from the State Board of Education that have already been sent out to all of us, and we are in the process right now of updating all of our procedures related to this with our nurses so that everything can be put into place. There is one piece here that I know you're going to bring up, which is about the committee for oversight. And it's actually a superintendent's committee. It's not a board policy committee. So it's a superintendent's committee for oversight of this policy.
And is that committee in place?
So
developed?
since this is a new
Very new,
committee
yeah.
that was just created by law, that is something that we will work on creating over the coming years. So for those of you who have been around for a while, you will recall that the district was once required to create a concussion oversight team, and the board was required to ask the superintendent to create a concussion oversight team. So it's similar to that sort of thing.
So actually, I was not going to ask about the committee.
Oh, wow. I was.
I was,
Yeah.
but it's great. Thank you. Because
Thank you. All right.
I did just want to ensure that so this that being that this policy is new and all these requirements are new, we're training. Like, are we offering the training to make sure that everybody is prepared to support this policy?
In a couple of different ways. So when all of our employees start in the district, they go through a number of different training programs online, which everybody is thrilled to do. Then annually, everybody gets to do them. And so those will come out usually around August 1st. And then in particular situations where additional training is required, then we do those building to building. So yes.
And then also having available epinephrine just for general use if
yes.
necessary. Is that something new, or is that something that,
So
I know that changed in some other,
in some other policies, right?
Right.
And the undesignated supply of glucagon and those sorts of things. So we've worked with our nurses to make sure that we have adequate supply of each of those.
great.
Great. All right. Thank you. Good with
Okay,
you, Beth?
yeah, yep.
Okay, so anything, Dr. Campbell, that's the final policy. I do see update of school board policy online. Mr. Bavone, please. It's summer.
Okay, so with this recommendation, we currently subscribe to the Illinois Association of School Board, their policy reference education subscription, which is PRESS, where we get our updates 4 times a year. What we would like is adoption. We currently have everything done in a PDF format. So when it's online, everything is done in a PDF format. So sometimes that makes it a little difficult for people to search and find policies and references according to those policies. And the IASB, they offer a service which is called School Board Policies Online, SBPOL, another acronym for our books. And what this does, it provides a service for an annual subscription of $2,500 per fiscal year. And they would be waiving a one-time $950 publishing fee. But if we were to go ahead and adopt this, they would do conversion of our online publication of the board's current adopted policy manual. There will be interactive links for each of the policies directly to the legal references, cross-references, branding of the district's SBPOL webpage, and the district-specific logo and color scheme, rapid updating of submitted board-approved updates, and it's unlimited access, storage, and updates as well. The search engine, specifically designed for the school board policy manuals, making it more user-friendly, much quicker to search and print any of our policies. And it's a much more easy to use for district administration to log in with their credentials. There are many districts that currently subscribe to this option with IASB. And so we believe that this would be helpful for anybody looking at our policies on our district website. So this is why the recommendation is being made.
I do think that a lot of times questions that community members have can be answered in our policy manual, but I agree that it's not always easy to find what you're looking for or to search a certain topic. So I like that this would give the public an easier access to the policies, maybe some links to other information that goes along with those things. So do we just would we submit to them what our changes are and they?
That's what I was going to say. Who makes the updates?
Correct. So once any revisions are made, then we as a district, we would submit those changes, and then they would make those changes for us, adopt it, put it online, and then there'd be the hyperlink, but they would make it active.
So we don't have actual control of our policy manual,
And
like as far as changes go and updates
right,
go. It would
they
be,
will.
they
We will.
would-
We will submit those changes.
After the second read, so after the board approves the second read of the policy of what we're doing here, that's what then goes to them. So you'll still see the red line, we'll still do the policy committee review.
And then someone would be overseeing that to make sure those changes were accurate and went through and that it's,
Correct.
okay. Is this something that'll come to a full board meeting and to be discussed? And yeah,
We would like your permission to bring it forward to the board. It goes back to what Courtney, shared on the onset. It provides, again, another opportunity for us to make information readily accessible and available to our broader community. We have done a good job of starting to review, as Ms. Troutman has already shared, and getting on this 5-year review cycle. But really, the policies help guide how decisions are being made, and we're really engaged with ensuring that our school practices appropriately align with our policies. We reference our policies regularly across all departments. As decisions come up, it is our number one go-to to determine how appropriate decisions and responses are made. And so this, again, will allow for policies to be easily searchable, for us to quickly reference not only internally as administration team, but also accessible for our broader school community.
I mean, listen, I love the idea of the accessibility. Beth and I, along with now Kara, but before that, we are always looking to verify policies moving forward. We're also very sensitive to the cost, the financial implications of adding this as an annual fee. But I certainly am supportive of this because I do want to make our community have that information available to them as easily as possible, and to make it the most efficient and expeditious way of getting the changes in there, right? Like, I'm going to hand this binder over to Kathy after this meeting, and she's going to pull the sections, and it's not, this is it's no longer feasible, right? And it doesn't make any sense to I'm all about old school, but this doesn't make any sense. So I am in supportive of this, I just,
Well, and with so many changes that are constantly coming our way, legislative changes and different requirements for our district, it's just, I mean, we have policies that we just looked at a couple months ago that we have to make changes to. So to constantly be making them in a binder or even in a PDF format is difficult. So this would help us to really keep things updated regularly, quickly, so that when anybody is looking at it, it's the most updated version. So, yeah, I
so
think.
I am comfortable making the recommendation to the full board to adopt this.
Yeah,
Are you-
and we can have that full discussion there.
Yep.
And hear if there are any other thoughts or concerns at that time, but yeah, I support bringing it forward.
Agreed? All right, thank you, Mr. Boone. All right, is there anything else that needs to be brought up? Discussions, updates? Okay, if not, next regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting will be held on June 14th, 2022 at 7 PM in the District 205 Center, rooms 215, 16, and 17. And with nothing else on our agenda, we call this meeting adjourned.